So, hello everyone, and welcome. This is our 32nd session on the Mahayana Uttara Tantra Shastra. And, well, it's not important, but today we start the Buddha Qualities chapter, and one important part of that are the 32 special marks of the Buddha. So it's our 32nd session, and so that's a nice sort of coincidence. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, wherever you are listening to this. And also hello to those who are watching this later on YouTube. So let's start, as we always do, with our bodhicitta motivation, turning our hearts in as much loving care as we can to all our endless sentient beings and all of those who in our past lives have been close to us, and our enemies and troublemakers for us, all of them. And then looking forward to the future between now and our own enlightenment, then in all those lives to come, all the people we'll meet. And so we have this big mind embracing so many people. And like how intense it is in this life when you get sort of involved with one person or another, one way or another. And so when we talk about sort of, infinite sentient beings, we tend to think, I think, in terms of space, this kind of geographical beings distributed geographically, but really we're looking at the multiplicity of minds and lives and experiences. This is really the Buddhist cosmos, not a material thing out there, but all the different lives and experiences that are going on and that have gone on and that will go on. So we try to realize how much we are part of all of that, and we want to be such a good and helpful and pure and harmless part of this endless web of being and existence. So for that, we take refuge in the Buddha, in the Dharma, and in the community of most noble minds. From this moment on until we reach the very heart of enlightenment, through our practice of generosity and all 6 transcendent virtues, may we reach total awakening and every enlightened quality, to be able to truly help sentient beings so lost in samsara. May each and every one of those beings be well. May they live long, be healthy, may they be well provided for, have good friends, find respect. May they live in places of peace and plenty. Most of all, may they practice Dharma. May they each create the causes for these good circumstances to be their wealth in future lives. May they be free from suffering and from creating causes of future suffering. May they discover the natural and sacred well-being, totally beyond suffering, and attain great equanimity that is free from closeness or distance from anyone. Deyata shame shamawati shameta shatru Om kurimare jite karota keorite juwati olayani bishuddha Limale malapa naye kukure kaka grase grasana omuki paramuki amuki shammedavane Sawa graha bandhanane nikrihitva Sava bhava pravadina vimukta marapasha Savitva buddha mudra anukatita Sava mare butsarita parishuddhe biga shantu Sava mara kamane. Glorious Guru, source of all blessing, ever present above our heads on lotus and moon seat, through your immense kindness, ever sustain us, that the accomplishments of body, speech, and mind flow from you, and we are one. Oh, last week it was our monthly Tonglen session, so now we're back with Mahayana Uttara Tantra. It's time to take the big focus, the reminder of where we are in all the Buddha's teachings. So the Buddha's teachings were given in three major steps. The three turnings of the wheel of Dharma. These teachings belong to the third turning of the wheel of Dharma. For those teachings, there are what the Buddha taught, that in general we use the word sutra for, and then there are the way the Buddha's own teachings were developed and explained and categorized by later Buddhist masters, and those we call the Shastra, the explanatory text. So amongst the sutras and the Shastra, this text is a Shastra, and it comes from the great master Asanga, who became indivisible from Buddha Maitreya, and who lived in the sort of 4th, 5th century, around that time. And the text itself is one of what are called the 5 great works, the 5 master works of Asanga, Maitreya. And so this text itself is technically in 3 main parts, although the first and the third are tiny. The first is the title and the homage, and then the second major part is the main body of the text. That main body of the text is itself in 2 major parts. One is called the result to be achieved, and that has 3 chapters, Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. That's the result we want to achieve. Second part is called the cause for achieving that result. We have remaining 4 chapters, Buddha nature, enlightenment, Buddha qualities, Buddha activity. And so those are called the first 3, the cause, the result to be achieved, and the last 4, the cause for achieving it, makes 7 Vajra points, 7 Vajra abodes, they're called, and the 7 major chapters of this text. And of those, now today, we go into the 6th, which is about the qualities of enlightenment. So having spent some time with enlightenment itself, especially in terms of the various kayas, and we should leave that chapter at least knowing what the 3 main kayas are, and preferably knowing their main qualities, the 5 main qualities of the Dharmakaya, Sambhogakaya, 12 deeds of the Buddha, Nirmanakaya, and so on. And so once there is enlightenment, now in this next chapter, we're looking at just some of its key qualities, some of its famous qualities. So I hope you'll emerge from this chapter and you'll know that in this text at least, we focus on 64. And you should know what those 64 qualities are. You should, at least as a list. So we have 10 powers, 4 fearlessnesses, 18 distinctive qualities, that's 32 so far, and then we have the 32 special marks of the Buddha. We'll be studying these 10 powers, 4 fearlessnesses, 18 distinctive qualities as being some of the key qualities of Dharmakaya, or Svabhavikakaya. If you remember from the last chapter, summed up as Vimuktikaya. Vimukti means freedom. that freedom kaya, that freedom aspect of enlightenment is benefit for oneself. It's the greatest possible benefit ever for oneself, is to achieve total freedom from everything that blocks, that limits, that darkens, that causes trouble in various gross or subtle ways. Total freedom. Vimuktikaya takes us into a state where you have these special powers, where you have a very special fearlessness, and where you have 18 distinctive qualities that no other being anywhere in the universe has. And then the 32 marks of the Buddha are mainly related to the benefit for others through the way you manifest to bodhisattvas as Sambhogakaya, and the way we manifest in the 6 realms as Nimanakaya. So we should know that list. 10 powers, 4 fearlessnesses, 18 distinctive qualities, 32 marks. And so these make the 64 key qualities of the Buddha. But that having been said, then what is emphasized, what is said in this text, in the commentary at least, and the commentary we're working from is Jamgon Kongtrul's, the first Kongtrul's commentary. In the Kagyu tradition, we use Kongtrul's works a lot. They are incredibly good. But he was such an amazing mind. So when we study this text, then you have the text itself, and then you have a much thicker text, which is Kongtrul's commentary. What Khenpo Sultim used to say is, yeah, but that commentary is so packed. You'd need a commentary for the commentary, because the way Kongtrul explains each point is like I think you've seen as we go through this text, when you look at one line and verse, it actually opens doors to so many topics. And each of those topics is related to other topics which are very key to its understanding. So anyway, so when we come to the commentary, and then what nearly all of our teachers say, and then in the past, masters like Gampopa who wrote, they say, one thing we need to know is that the qualities of Buddha mind are endless. It's not as though there are just 64. We need to know and feel and appreciate that anything that is a good quality, obviously not a harmful quality or a nasty quality, anything that is a good quality is there. We need to know that. And I wanted to make an example. Now, this isn't in the commentary, this is Ken's example, right? And it may not be that good. It's quite modern, but it's something that struck me anyway. So I'd like you to cast your mind back about 40 or 50 years, if you've got that many years under your belt, and to how things were. And then we're going to stack these things up, right? And probably those of you who are quite preemptive, you'll be guessing, where's this taking us, a long time before we get to where I'm going. I'm a preemptive thinker. I'm trying to always be one step ahead of the game and think, where's this going? Where's this taking us? What's he going to say next, or she going to say next? So anyway, so one thing to think of, so we're going to heap these things up in a big space. About 1,000 books. Right. About 1,000 books. And then, remember, we're going back now 40, 50 years. A TV broadcast quality video camera. You know, one of those big things that you hold on your shoulder. They used to weigh a ton. A video camera. And then, going back, a reel-to-reel tape recorder in one of these big things that, and the very early ones, it took a couple of people to lift them. A dial-up telephone with a cable and brrr, brrr, where you used your finger to dial a number. An old computer screen, a cathode ray, big, stinky, bad vibrations, cathode ray, one of those big ones, computer screen. A torch. 40, 50 years ago, they only had the big batteries, these big clunky batteries, a metal torch. About a dozen file boxes and accounting ledgers for keeping your economics going. A whole load of atlases and maps. So if you've been stacking these up in a room already, you've got a lot of stuff. And of course, today, all of these are in a phone. This can be a torch, this can be 1,000 books, this can be all of your family accounts or your business accounts, this can be your telephone, this can be a computer, so many different things. But look, just now this one's turned off. It can be all those things. They're all in there somewhere. But just now it's not doing any of them. But you can trigger them, like turn it on, tap, 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 and then your accounts, tap, tap, tap. Then I'm talking to Myron in Hawaii, or tap, 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 something else. It's all those things are in there. And sort of, but you could never tell it. Where are the account books? Where is, oops, I turned it on just by shaking it. Go away. So anyway, it gives us some idea of what we're talking about. The endless qualities are in this timeless, changeless, always been there mind, this potential. Benefit for ourselves, benefit for others. So out of all of those qualities that are in an enlightened being's mind, we are just going to focus on these 64. But we should never think that's it. That's what a Buddha is. When we've got to the end of the 64, we've covered it. We've just somehow looking at what's emerged for various reasons in Buddhist academic history. You see, when you meet a really good guru, very, very good Rinpoche or Lama, then you realize just, well, like as I've done, seeing wonderful teachers teach different people. They have endless and such varied resources to draw upon. They've not only got a limited number of techniques, like not to mention any tradition, but there is one, in a way, very good, very pure, very healthy meditation tradition that many people go to. And it's grown so quickly that it needed local teachers, so it has teachers. But those teachers can only say they've only got so much advice to give because they are not enlightened mind. They're very good people, they're experienced, but they can only say, like, carry on with the practice, or this is all your mind, or they've only got limited resources to help somebody. Which is fine, most of the time it works, but then some of the time things are happening to people and the teacher's completely out their depth. They can't handle it. With luck, they can send the person upstairs to their teacher, or send them away to, Burma, Sri Lanka, India, wherever it is. So here we're looking at an enlightened mind with endless, pure, powerful, wonderful resources. And we're just focusing on these ones. So let's go to the book. Otherwise I'll go waffling on for an hour and a half and we're finished. So we're now on the 6th Vajra Abode of the Qualities of Buddhahood, page 242. And first in this chapter we look at a synopsis of the number of main qualities and their relations to the kayas that we've just seen in the previous chapter. So verse 241 says, fulfillment for oneself and benefit for others are the ultimately true kaya, that's Svabhavika kaya, Dharmacharya, and its dependent relative kaya, Sambhogakaya and Nimanakaya. Sambhogakaya for the bodhisattvas in their wonderfully pure and expansive minds, and Nimanakaya for being still in a one life after another life in the 6 realms. The fruits of freedom and perfect maturity, you'll remember from the previous chapter, these were the code words for Dharmakaya and the form kayas. Freedom and perfect maturity are their 64 qualities. So I think this is just an introduction. So if we go straight to verse 242, the bottom of page 243, it says, the ground, the basis for acquiring fulfillment for oneself is the embodiment, that means kaya, of the ultimate truth kaya. That's the ground, that's the basis for fulfillment for oneself. So what are those 2 lines telling us? Is that Dharmakaya, ultimate truth, shunyata, that's always been, becoming that is the ultimate fulfillment for oneself. And as I've said before, we need to get our heads around this. What are we doing? What are we praying to be able to do? When we did our bodhicitta prayer, we want to become Buddhas to benefit ourselves and all beings. So it's not, how can you say, becoming something. It's not like becoming King of England, or becoming a super wrestler, or becoming something. Our vision of the ultimate achievement for ourselves is for our self to disappear. That's kind of weird thinking-wise, The ultimate self is no self. The ultimate best thing for you to do is to stop existing. And you'll be the better off for it, but you won't be as somebody the better off. You are like the drop of water disappearing into this wonderful ocean. So this is why here we're looking at all the qualities in it. What we're not looking at here, but which is very, very helpful for understanding what's in this text, is what happens through the 10 bodhisattva levels as a development of various things, as a development of fearlessness, for instance, as a development of wisdom, and seeing how those things mature level after level. So now when we get to Buddhahood, how they become perfect. That's really incredibly helpful, because we can make sense of it from the first bodhisattva level and then see how that purifies, develops, grows, expands, and so on. And then here we're looking at the very end, the qualities of enlightenment. So those first two lines tell us that the ground, the basis for ultimate fulfillment for oneself is ultimate truth. Ultimate truth, shunyata, dharmakaya. We can give it so many names. We've seen that in earlier verses. So many names, nirvana, ultimate truth, and so on. That ultimate state is best benefit for oneself. So it's the ground. When we come to Vajrayana teachings based on this text, then we look at ground, path, fruition, how that ground is already in us from the beginning, and how Vajrayana's practice helps us realize we are already Buddha. We have already all the qualities in the depths of our mind. They're not something new to be acquired. And in the Buddha Nature chapter, we looked at that a lot. We're not acquiring something other when we become Buddha, something that's not ourselves. We're bringing out what is the true nature that's always been there of ourselves. So these two lines are saying that. And then the symbolic embodiments of the great sages are the ground for the greatest possible altruism. So this is greatest possible benefit for others, come in these very meaningful form kayas, where one manifests to beings, other beings, in forms that are full of meaning, full of presence. Verse 243, over the page, the first kaya, Dharmakaya, Svabhavika kaya, is endowed with the qualities of freedom, presented as the powers and so forth. 10 powers, 4 fearlessnesses, 18 distinctive qualities. I'm going to keep saying this because I want to drum it in, right? 10 powers, 4 fearlessnesses, 18 distinctive qualities. 4 powers, 10 powers, 4 fearlessnesses, 18 distinctive qualities, right? The first kaya, one's own total freedom, is presented through the powers and so forth. And the second, the form kayas, are called the maturity kaya, is presented through the 32 marks of a perfect being. So if you come down to the bottom of page 244, it says other special beings such as universal emperors, Chakravartins, and some very highly developed non-Buddhist sages, known in the past as Rishi. Rishi is a very nice term in Sanskrit, Rishi. It's a very accomplished, very pure, very holy, sacred being, Rishi. May have some or many of the 32 major signs. However, these signs are the same in name only. The actual details and context of each one is different from that of a Buddha, and the Buddha's one is by far and away superior. The word rishi, which in other contexts may mean a non-Buddhist or an arhat, can also be used to mean Buddha. So what we're looking at is the text and the commentary where it talks of the Buddha as the greatest rishi, the greatest of the rishis. The place where the Buddha first taught his five first disciples it has an interesting name. It means where the rishis land. And so in the old legends, the rishis had the power of control over the elements, so they could fly through space. But they stop down, it's a bit like aeroplanes, they stop halfway on the journey. So between the Ganges and the Himalaya mountains is this wild forest that at one point a king had dedicated to holy beings. Was one of their landing spots, I suppose. It sort of land, meet up, chat with your fellow rishis, and then fly off to the nice clean air of the Himalayas. But anyway, it's just an anecdote. So we'll come to that. I mean, first we need to do the 10 powers before fearlessness is, and the 18 distinctive qualities as the qualities of our own final freedom and accomplishment. But then we do come to the 32 marks of a Buddha, and that's it's an interesting topic. I'd like to say a few things about them today, because then they sort of stew in our minds, and then when we come to them in the detail, we'll have thought about them for a bit. So in the first centuries after the Buddha, there were no representations of the Buddha in an anthropomorphic sense. There was no head, body, arms, legs Buddhas. The Buddha was represented by space. There was a riderless horse. So it wasn't the horse representing the Buddha. The horse is the Dharma, and the Buddha was like an invisible rider. Or a footprint, something that's left after somebody's passed through. So this great spirit of enlightenment passed through the Sangha for 45 years and left its mark as blessing, as teachings, as method, and so on. So there was a footprint. And a few other signs like that, the wheel of Dharma. But the Buddha himself was not represented for centuries. And it wasn't considered right to represent the Buddha. And then slowly that changed. But nevertheless, even though the Buddha wasn't represented in the Buddhist world, in the communities of the Sangha, by statues or by visual representations like thongkas and so on, nevertheless, there were from the earliest days in the commonly accepted teachings stories of these special things that people had seen in the Buddha, special marks. So we find those in the Pali Canon, we find them in the sutras. You'll find both the 32 major marks and the 80 marks. You can't quite say other marks. You can't quite say secondary. It's just a different listing. But we find them. We find the 32 marks in a sutra called the Lakkhana Sutra. We find the 80 marks in several places, Milinda Panha and the text called the Apadana. That's in the commonly accepted teachings. And we find, so it's in these commonly accepted teachings, these are mainly in what are called the agamas, which are what the Sangha wrote down once the Buddha had passed. They were trying to gather as much information to remember. They didn't write it down, actually, they just remembered. But not things the Buddha had said directly. So in the agamas, we have so much of the story of the Buddha, and then the agamas come through in the Pali Canon and some of its texts. So anyway, it seems that, as much as we can tell, because we can't tell that much from Indian history, but it seems that the Mahayanist schools that emerged in the centuries after the Buddha weren't too interested in these marks. They weren't too interested in having, can you say, the Buddha as a figure to worship. They were much more interested in doing it themselves, becoming a Buddha themselves. And that evolved with the centuries. But anyway, let's not get too lost. But it did evolve so that we see in later teachings, when we look at the three refuges, Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, then Buddha becomes the main refuge for the Mahayana. As an example, the Dharma becomes the main refuge for the Pratyeka Buddha Sangha, and then the Sangha becomes the main refuge for the Shravaka Buddha Sangha. Anyway, that's another point. But so to get back to the main point, no representations at all of the Buddha for a few centuries, and then gradually in Mathura, that's one area, and then also up in what's now Pakistan, in Gandhara area. Then representations of the Buddha started to emerge. We've seen this before, mainly based on Grecian artistic influence. So the first Buddha statues look like Grecian kings. But anyway, that's another long story. Yeah. Fascinating, but this is not the time for it. So anyway, the 32 marks of the Buddha, in terms of literature and what people were interested in as Buddhists, gradually took form. Now, in this text, we are, we're up 9 centuries, 8, 9, 10 centuries after the Buddha. A lot's happened. A lot has fallen into place as commonly accepted Dharma. People have argued about things, and a lot's happened. So we're looking at the 32 or the 80 marks of a Buddha as Buddhists in Kashmir at the time of Asanga thought it to be. That's the point I want to make. But in all the debates that had taken place up to that point, one thing that was questioned and not really answered is, okay, so these were the special marks of a Buddha. Who saw them? Could everybody see them? Or were these what people gifted with pure sight and clairvoyance, people who meditated a lot, people with pure minds? Is it only them who saw them? So there was, just to let you know, there was a debate about this, and there is one scripture, I forget the name of it, but there's one scripture in which it mentions that somebody couldn't tell the Buddha from the rest of the Sangha because they all looked the same. They all had the orange robes. And somebody had trouble. He had to ask, which one of you is the Buddha? So it wasn't as though there was somebody kind of glowing and with all these special qualities who so obviously stood out as the Buddha. So some people say, therefore it was only those with pure vision who saw these special signs. And I must say there's a good argument for that, because as we do meditate, and as the meditation becomes stable and brings qualities, then many of these things that are mentioned become very understandable. Like you can look at your own skin and you start to see sacred signs, like tattoos which come and go on it, things like this. So there's an argument for that. And also when we look when the Buddha was born and when his father called in the rishis, the sages, to predict the future, then they came up with different, each one with their own suggestions. And it was only the one who said, the most impressive one, who said, looking at the baby's body and seeing the signs, he says, no, this would definitely be either a Buddha or a great universal king, which means he saw these 32 marks of a universal monarch or a Buddha. So anyway, it's just to, how can you say, introduce you to this idea of the Buddha's body being very special to some of those who saw it. And so we'll come round to that. So today, now we're looking, or starting to look at the 10 powers, the 4 fearlessnesses, and the 18 distinctive qualities. And the first powers, the first of the powers, these are the 10 powers of wisdom, 10 powers of knowledge. So all of them are about the wisdom that's acquired at Buddhahood. And we see these 10 wisdoms developing through the bodhisattva levels. And now we're looking at them when they're totally pure. So now once we go on to the next verse, now we enter in the structure of the text, the section which is more detailed explanation. So it says an introduction to these and an introduction to the examples which show them. So we get 4 examples. 4 examples. So verse 244, counteracting ignorance's veils, the powers are like a vajra. So vajra is the first example for the 10 powers. And fearlessness in any situation, the 4 fearlessnesses, is like a lion. So 4 fearlessnesses. The Tathagata's distinctive qualities are like space, 18 distinctive qualities, example, space. And the 2 aspects which victors manifest, Sambhogakaya, Nimanakaya, are like the moon in water, the reflection of the moon in water. Very, very famous Buddhist analogy. So first, the 10 powers, the example is a vajra. Now, the vajra, we don't have any, I don't think there are any actual vajras in this world. Of course, there's stuff you can buy from Tibetan centers, brass vajras, which are symbolic, but the real vajra is the weapon of Indra. And this goes back, and it gets complicated but interesting. If we go outside this text and the commentary, if we just go into, how can you say, archaeology and history and the development of religion in humankind, then big mountains, which is where the storms came from, are one of the earliest sources of people's belief that the gods inhabited the mountains. And the biggest mountain would be where the biggest god. And so then the mountains were the places where storms came from and where thunder came from. So you get the thunderclap would be the gods up to their tricks, whatever they do, and a manifestation of something much bigger than what we humans can do. So there's all that sort of history, which really does come through in so many ancient religions. And so we have Mount Meru as the abode of the gods. And then, but in the legends, and this is what we're looking at, an example in the legends, Indra is the king of the gods. And Indra has this weapon, which is a Vajra, which is like a divine thunderbolt. It's great these days. We've got Hollywood, we've got Star Wars and all that kind of thing. So some kind of thing you can hold in your hand and destroy anything. We can visualize it very easy because Hollywood has made that very easy for us, to see like that. And, you've overpowered something or somebody. The Vajra is defined as the ultimate weapon that can destroy any other weapon. You just hold it and direct its power. But in itself is indestructible. So there's two qualities. Can destroy anything, cannot itself be destroyed. Which is why Indra is king of the gods. He's got the biggest weapon. It's like these days, nuclear powers and so on. It's the ultimate threat, the ultimate weapon. So here, the natural, perfect, pure, ultimate state of mind, Dharmakaya, Svabhavikakaya, the names are interchangeable, that can destroy all illusion, which is the basis of suffering, but in itself can never be destroyed. It can be covered up. Of course, it is covered up just now by our ignorance, by our karma, by all of our stream of consciousness and this non-stop manifestation. It can be covered up, but it can never be damaged or destroyed. And that ultimate truth will be what, when we uncover it in the first bodhisattva level and more through the bodhisattva levels, and when it becomes the only thing that's left of Buddhahood, that ultimate truth can destroy all of ignorance and its consequences, duality, mind poisons, karma, suffering. So the first example of the powers of wisdom, the wisdom that's innate to our mind, are like a Vajra. The four fearlessnesses are like a lion in the legends, right? I used to go and teach in Africa, so there people know about real lions. And real lions are not necessarily as fearless as that. I mean, even when you see some big buffalo, big hoofed animals, they can really fight lions. The power of their hooves kicking has killed many a lion. And so the lions go for the baby bovids, I think that's the word, the baby bovids, the four-legged creatures, oxen and so on, because they're safe. But if the parents protect the young, they can kick a lion, and lions are wary of them. They are scared of those hooves. So we're not talking about real lions. We're talking about lions, king of the jungle in the legends. Not afraid of anybody. Fearlessness. So this fearlessness starts, and it's beautiful. It starts on the first bodhisattva level. And it's kind of good news. I mean, we're looking here at enlightenment, Buddha qualities. That's maybe a long way off, but maybe first bodhisattva level is not so far away. So, and when you get there, we get 5 fearlessnesses. Why? Well, to get there, the gross part of ego delusion has to go. This delusion of me. So with this delusion of me comes hope and fear. When the delusion of me has been worked on and taken away bit by bit, and we get to first bodhisattva level, then we lose fear, for instance, of not gaining a livelihood. This is a very real fear for most of us, except for people like me who've retired. But even then, if you're retired, you're still worrying if your pension's going to last or if it's going to change or whatever. There's this, will life be able to support me? It's a very real fear, one way or another, in different forms. And not just for humans, fear for animals too, of having enough to eat, getting enough, setting enough, if you're a squirrel, setting enough nuts aside for the winter or whatever. It's there in the 6 realms of existence. It's survival, basically. For humans who work, it's gaining a living. So that fear goes at the first bodhisattva level. Isn't that lovely? Isn't that something to look forward to? Whatever happens, you're going to be okay. Whatever happens, you're going to be okay. Second one is fear of not having a good reputation. And so, what people think of you. This is important for us too. It really hurts when people think wrongly of you. Some years ago now, about 10 years ago, someone who had a grudge against me started spreading rumors, very nasty rumors, in Africa. And rumors are terrible. Once they spread, people believe them. They say no smoke without fire. And it took a while to sort of clear it away, to make it known what had happened. But it was, for me, because I don't have this freedom, right? It felt terrible when people are saying things about you that aren't true. And people are looking at you in a way where in the back of their mind is like, It's horrible. It's really horrible. And it's not quite so bad when you actually have done bad things and people look at you knowing what a naughty boy you've been or a bad person. But even then, that's uncomfortable. You have a reputation that goes in front of you and the people relate to you through and their own projections. So that's there. First bodhisattva level, that goes. Why? Because at first bodhisattva level, your default nature is Buddha mind. You know who you really are. So how people in illusion relate to the illusion of your personality is just the play of samsara. So even if on a relative level you have done wrong things and people relate to you like that, you know this is your karma playing out. It's the way it has to be. But you're not affected by it because you're not identifying with that personality. That's not the real you. The real you is Buddha. That's the superficial story of you made by karma. We have to live through it as long as it lasts. But it's not the real you. There's the beauty of Buddha mind. So that goes. Third, fear of death. Gone at first bodhisattva level. Because, again, your real you is Buddha mind, which is beyond birth and death. So any reincarnation that still has to come through the power of karma is dealt with from a place of perfect peace. Number 4 is fear of being reborn in the lower realms. Because if you are reborn in the lower realms, you'll be reborn as a bodhisattva. And you'll be, like when we see the past lives of the Buddha in the Jataka stories, you can be an animal helping other animals. You could be an animal helping humans. You could be reborn as a guide dog, as a, what they call service animal, service dog, or rather animal to help people. You could be reborn in the spirit realm to help spirits. You could be reborn in the hell realms to help hell beings. So that fear of lower rebirth, gone for good reason. And then number 5 is fear or anxiety about being stuck among worldly people. Stupid company. And, all they can talk about is what's on TV or whatever it is. They don't have their own minds. They've got TV minds. And so you can be with them in a very compassionate way. I remember my old mother. I mean, she was old. She died at 94, and she didn't have much mobility. She had to be pushed around. So TV soaps were wonderful for her. She was alive in this world and alive in that world. And they were stupid stories and the sort of it wasn't deep drama. It wasn't thinking theatre. It was soaps. But that was wonderful for her. And rather than being in the limited, very, very limited human space she was in various countries, and people were like friends, and I think you get the story. So because you've reached first bodhisattva level and your mind has awakened to and has as its default nature all of the Buddhas and bodhisattvas, they're really there, then you don't depend on company for your joy, for your well-being. And on the contrary, the presence of different beings is the ground for our bodhisattva activity. And this goes a long way. There's so much to think about in these, about how we do need Dharma friends, spiritual friends, people we can relate to on the level that we're at. And so it's nice. You can spend some time with people who aren't there, but it's so refreshing and sometimes so needed that we can be with other members of the Sangha. So anyway, all of that's just to say, this happens at first bodhisattva level. fearlessness. So then the fearlessness that develops and that's perfect as a Buddha is compared to a lion's fearlessness. Then the 18 distinctive qualities are like space. So when we come to that, we'll look at the power of the 4 prime elements: earth, water, fire, wind, and how they are different from space, and how the 18 distinctive qualities, which in a way can seem present within samsaric beings, in the most fortunate with the best karma, how in fact they're not at all the same because of their inner quality. And then when we come after that to 32 major marks, we're looking at Sambhogakaya, Nirmanakaya. We see how these manifest so powerfully to help beings, but they aren't what they seem to be. So we have the image, the example is the reflection of the moon in water. It's bright. If the water is perfectly still, you can see all the details, but it's not the moon. It's not the moon that's in the water, and you can't put your hand in the water and scoop up the moon. As they say in French, insaisissable. Beautiful word. So now we start looking at the 10 powers. We're on page 246 and verses 245 and 246. Verse numbers, same as the page numbers. So to know the possible and the impossible. 1. The full maturation of actions, the faculties, the temperaments, the wishes of beings, the path which determine each and every state, meditative stability and so on, that which is unblemished by defilement, memories of former states, divine vision and peace. These are the 10 powers of perfect awareness. So when we look at the Buddha's perfect awareness, then we've got these 10. So the first one is perfect awareness of the possible and the impossible. This is to know what can and can't happen, cause and effect. And so, to make a cup of tea, you need tea leaves or a tea bag, some water, and then whatever else. If you've got rocks and water, you can't make a cup of tea. No matter how hard you try, you'll never get a cup of tea by boiling up rocks. Right? Just can't happen. Well, that's okay because it's obvious. We know that. But there are so many things we don't know where we try, and we try so hard to get a result that can't happen. If we think of brewing up, like making tea, all the things we brew up to find happiness, the places we look for happiness, worldly, whatever it is. So many ways, and that can't work. It's not very fair to talk about anybody, but in a way, it's a vivid example of, well, let's not name anybody, but somebody who could be a trillionaire. So you see, how could somebody have so much and yet be such a loser? Because they don't have humanity to help people do good with their money and so on. So to know what's possible and not possible, to know causality every one of its aspects, psychological causality, material causality, all the causes and results in general, is the first perfect wisdom, perfect awareness of what is and isn't possible. So that's about cause and effect in general. And in particular, it's about causes, the causes and conditions that come together and what they can or cannot produce. We're focused on perfect awareness of causes. The second one is perfect awareness of results. And so this is about the results. Now, of all of the causes and results, then happiness and suffering, and even more particularly, rebirth. So what can we do to get a good rebirth? We should be thinking about this day and night, because it's going to come. And believe you me, when you get to my age and my state of health, it's quite imminent. So where am I going next is quite a question. It's quite a question. I'm wondering who this poor lady who's wandering around now, who's going to be my next mum. I'm wondering who she is, and she doesn't know what's coming to her. Probably, around now. We should be thinking of this day and night, because this life is just one of a series. What are we doing now to make the next life better than this one? Beautiful, wonderful, meaningful life. We should be working on that quite intensely, rather than try and pick up the pieces of this life and, whatever's left of it. We should be. So there's a thing when we study karma, we study 3 levels of results from our actions. And so one is called a result similar to the cause, one is called a rebirth result, and then there's general consequences. There's 3 things. So this rebirth result is called technically full maturation of our action, the full karmic maturation of what we did. And that usually translates as rebirth. Rebirth as a human, rebirth as a god, rebirth as an animal. So this second perfect awareness is awareness of all results, but in particular, what can bring us to a meaningful human or divine rebirth. So Buddhas understand all of that spontaneously, perfectly. They don't have to refer to a textbook. They don't need to think about it. They just know that what you're doing, how that's going to end up. The third perfect awareness is perfect awareness of the various faculties of being. Now this word faculty in Sanskrit is indriya. It can be quite specific. When we study it in Abhidharma, we make charts of the different beings in the 6 realms and the faculties they have. Humans have, there's 22 major faculties we look at, and we see what humans have, what animals have, what don't have, what devas have, and so on. And there can be that meaning of indriya faculties. But here we're looking at it much more generally and in terms of capability. What are they capable of understanding? What are they capable of doing? And those two together, like us, it's quite poignant. Yeah, why not? Maybe that's as good a word as any, poignant. How much we understand, how much or how little we act on it. The capacity of somebody. Somebody may be able to, for instance, practice Dharma very well, very intensely, but they can't understand too much. So there's no point explaining complicated things, because it won't help, and it will make them feel inadequate. Whereas if they sit on their butt and meditate and practice and do prostrations and all those other things, they can progress very, very well, very quickly. And other people can understand a lot, but getting around to practice is another story. So they can go to endless Dharma talks, lectures, study all sorts of texts. They've really got their head around the theory, but they're slow with the practice, and all sorts of combinations of these things. So understanding the faculties of beings really means understanding what they're capable of. So and then, if you're a Dharma teacher, people might come to a wonderful Dharma teacher, and they ask for instructions in this, and they're not ready for it, or it's not going to help them. And so you have to, in a very wise and skillful way, saying, yes, but maybe first do a bit of this, or maybe first study that, and or whatever. So understand. So, of course, that's there even before the Bodhisattva levels. In the 2 stages before the Bodhisattva levels, a stage of accumulation, stage of junction, we become Dharma teachers. We already need to understand what somebody's capable of and give them what they can do, not give them something that's going to bust them, that's too much, not give them too little so that they're not fulfilled by their practice. That's already a skill that's developing. It certainly develops a lot more through the 10 levels. Here we're looking at Buddha's perfect awareness of the faculties of different beings. Number 4 is perfect awareness of the different temperaments of beings. So let me just read the text here, because it's as good as I can say spontaneously. This understands the predominant psychological and karmic factors at play in somebody's existence. Some people are dominated by anger, by resentment, by frustration. Some are driven by desire, ambition, and needs. Others are lonely, over-introspective, or locked up in their thoughts. Some people exude positivity and strength, yet may need to erect rigid internal psychological structures to maintain it. In brief, each being is a complex mixture of drives, impulses, habits, and karmic conditioning. The teachings a Buddhist master gives need to be able to tackle these effectively and in the appropriate order. So this Buddha's awareness is the culmination of clarity and perspicacity which emerges through the long bodhisattva path. Just knowing what you're dealing with, the psychology of the person and what's holding them back, and all of that. Awareness of the different temperaments of beings. Number 5, carrying on similar story, perfect awareness of beings' wishes. So also the teachings that are given by a Buddhist teacher, they need to align with people's own aspirations. It's no use asking them to do things they don't relate to. They've got their own wishes, their own vision of where they're going. with their Dharma path. So that needs to be understood and worked with intelligently. And there's no point giving people a practice they don't feel for. On the other hand, sometimes there's no point giving people the practice they really, in themselves, feel for. Like so many people used to come to Akon Rinpoche, they want instruction in the 6 yogas of Naropa. They want Tummo, they want dream yoga or whatever it is, and they weren't ready for it. There's all sorts of reasons. People really, really wanted those teachings, about inner energies and their mastering and chakras and channels. Sometimes because in past lives they've been there, so they have a connection. Sometimes because they want power. All sorts of reasons people can aspire. So one needs to understand what's going on and to be able to work with that in a very instructive way. I remember Akon Rinpoche used to say sometimes about individuals, because they had very strong aspirations and what they wanted, he says sometimes you need to keep people on a very long rope so they can wander quite a way, but nevertheless they keep the connection, and they have to go off here doing that because they've got to get it out their system. They've got to do that. They've got to do a retreat, or they've got to do this. But then gradually, once they've got that out their system, then you can pull them in a little bit and get them closer to a practice that's really going to help them. Number 6, perfect awareness of the paths that determine each and every state. So, although number 1 and number 2 were about awareness of karma, cause and effect, now this number 6 is particularly about cause and effect. And then those things we just looked at, somebody's own qualities, what was the word we used? Faculties, their own aspirations, their own mentality. So knowing which Dharma paths to use for different people. The Shravaka path, which is suited, absolutely perfectly suited to so many people. And the Mahayana path, which is suited to those who already have, as we see in the Bodhisattva teachings, already have a loving heart and a background from previous lives of bodhicitta and so on. So it's knowing which paths lead where, and then within practice, knowing for this person with this type of aspiration, this type of mentality, this type of karma, this type of faculty, then where this Dharma practice would take them, is it the most suitable one? Are they going to mess it up in a certain way, misuse it? Or on the contrary, is it exactly what they need? So knowing the different Dharma paths and where they lead. And the different karma paths as well, but mainly Dharma paths. Number 7, perfect awareness of meditation, all the different meditation practices, the absorptions they lead to, and the usefulness or not of those absorptions, so that not all meditations are suited to everybody. Meditation needs to be tailored to a person's mentality, aspirations, faculties, to take them in the right direction. So it's knowing meditation And as meditation gets deeper, more subtle, then there is in some ways a greater danger of going wrong. So in general, a Dharma master needs to know not just the benefits that can come out of meditation, but the dangers that can come with it. There's one, it's quite scary, Buddhist sutra, Shurangama Sutra, which talks about the pitfalls of meditation. You know, how the more powerful your mind gets, how the more danger you can face of the power going wrong. Of course, we've got this. Hollywood again, wonderful, you know, the dark side. You belong to the dark side now. You know, how power can be misused, how but how that's not obvious at first when you're in a certain state of meditation. How simple distraction doesn't seem that serious a thing, but it's like a rock falling high up on a mountain. You know, one rock can cause a whole landfall and a lot of damage further down. I wrote a novel once, back 2003, and as a little introduction before the thing starts, it says there's a rabbit on a mountainside, and accidentally its rear foot kicks a little pebble and it moves on, eating the grass, not knowing that the little pebble it's set going has caused a rock fall that's destroyed a whole village down below. So sometimes in the more powerful meditation, the more powerful it gets, the more there is such a need for perfect generosity, right conduct, forbearance, all the paramitas. Otherwise it can go wrong. So knowing meditation in all of its aspects and in relation to the faculties and the aspirations of somebody is very, very important. Number 8 is perfect awareness in the form of total recall of former states. So when we look at remembering past lives, we see how with mastery of shamatha, we get some memories of past lives. How when one becomes arhat, one can remember, it takes work, but one can remember past lives, up to about 100 past lives. Bodhisattvas can remember more, but only Buddhas are aware not only of their own, all of their past lives, but of other people's past lives as well. Number 9 is perfect divine vision. So this is actually not just vision, it is the 5 or the 6 superpowers. So which is perfect vision, clairvoyance, seeing clearly beyond the limits of the human eye and human time-space limitations, seeing clearly, hearing clearly, knowing other people's minds, knowing past lives is one of them, and knowing how to produce miracles. These are the 5. When there's 6, the last one's quite funny. It's called the superpower of exhaustion, and which is a funny title, and it means that one really knows when obstacles, the mind poisons, or karma has been finished, exhausted, come to an end. It's not exhaustion, fatigue, it means there's no more left. And then number 10, perfect awareness of peace. There are many levels of peace. Peace just doesn't mean calm. That would be so easy if it was. I mean, we want perfect peace. You just take a perfect sleeping tablet. Oh, flat line, nothing happening. That kind of peace is not what we're talking about. Peace means that every trouble has been pacified. The trouble of karma, the trouble of the mind poisons, the trouble of dualistic delusion, the trouble of ignorance. All of these troubles have been brought perfectly to peace. So again, when we look how that happens through the 10 bodhisattva levels, then this final level of enlightenment is like the ultimate. We can just manage, I think, before we finish, to do verse 247, page 251. Such powers, and then it goes through the list, the appropriate and inappropriate, that means possible and impossible, full maturation, temperaments, beings' aspirations, their various paths, the defiled and the perfectly pure, the groupings of faculties, remembrance of former states, divine vision, and the way to exhaust impurity. All of those 10 powers are like a vajra. So here's our example. Because 3 things. They penetrate the armor of ignorance. They shatter the walls of what comes from ignorance, and they fell its tree. So, the vajra, the weapon of Indra, is destroying 3 things. All right. First, it's busting through the armor of the opponent. So, basic ignorance, not knowing that we are Buddha, is completely covering us like armor, especially some of these armor that have got a helmet thing that comes over the eyes. So we are completely locked up in our delusion. And so Buddha mind, through meditation, through the blessing of all of our teachers and the lineage and so on, will break through this ignorance in which we are totally wrapped up, and in which ego tries to protect itself. And then the thickness of our mind's obscuration. So now we're not looking at basic ignorance of Buddha nature, we're looking at what obscures it, 2 obscurations, the defilements and the blockages to knowledge. They're compared to a wall. So then here the vajra is just breaking down the wall. And then what comes out of our 2 obscurations is all the play of what we've done and the karma that we have to face. So this is like a tree that's grown up from something that's got many branches, many leaves, many, beautiful word, ramifications, which comes from the Latin meaning branches and developments. So then this is like the vajra. Here it's all the vajra doing it. It's not an axe. So it's the vajra which knocks down the tree. In other places, in Buddhist poetry, we get 3 different things. It's the spear that pierces the armor. It's like the cannonball that knocks down the wall, and some big instrument that knocks down a wall, and it's the axe which fells the tree. But in here, it's the vajra. So there we go. That's it for this morning. So 10 powers, 4 fearlessnesses, 18 distinctive qualities, 32 special marks, altogether 64 qualities of the Buddha. Let's dedicate anything that was good and useful. May whatever virtue was created by our session contribute to the state of omniscience. And now we know what we're talking about, 10 powers of wisdom being attained by the main enemy, the mind's defilements being completely defeated. Vajra. Through that, may each and every sentient being become freed from the ocean of existence, qualities of freedom, vimuktikaya, troubled by the waves of rebirth, aging, sickness, and death. May this precious bodhicitta arise in those in whom it has not yet arisen. In those in whom it has arisen, may its development know no setbacks. May it increase ever more and more. And through this virtue, may we quickly achieve Mahamudra and establish every single sentient being in that same accomplishment. So now, time for your comments and or questions.
You solved a great mystery for me today.
Oh, good.
Yeah, really. It's one of the experiences I had in Tibet when I was there in 1997. One night I was outside doing my business, it was very cold there. And suddenly I hear a noise of like bells. And in front of me comes a horse, galloping horse, the most beautiful horse I've ever seen, even in paintings. He was very elaborated, he had this, what you call it, oh God. Anyway.
Mane? The hair? The mane?
Yeah, they like a peacock feathers, some sort of feathers. Mm-hmm. And the bells and the poise. The poise was just like you see in the Lungta. Afterwards, I thought that I saw a Lungta, but I always knew that it was not the whole thing. Riding the horse was invisible. You could feel the presence of someone, like totally wearing black or something. But you couldn't figure out the features. And today you explained it. The Buddha on the Dharma horse.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. My Lama did a lot of things like that. I later figured out a lot of things like that. So that was one of the visions he let me saw there in Tibet. Yeah. So thank you.
Well, yeah. I was going to say thank Asanga, but that's actually not in his text. So it's just in Buddhist history. Yeah.
Hi, Ken.
I knew.
I was interested in your initial reference to the mobile phone. I'm sure several of us preemptively knew what you were talking about. But in many ways, our current mobile phones are very primitive. in the mid 19th century or 20th century, one of the, I don't know what it was called, chief executive, but the head of one of the phone companies predicted that a phone would be able to be carried around and speak to anybody everywhere. And he also said it would translate languages instantly. Interesting, that's almost happening. Google are working on something. But it reminds me of the powers of, you've referred to it before, like people like Karmapa can give teachings and people hear it in different languages. So I think that will come very quickly to phones. But also you mentioned like you could tap out and then speak to Myron, for example. But that's quite primitive, because some phones maybe now you can just say Myron and it will connect you. I think soon it will mean that you can just think Myron or Myron and Neil and we'll both come on. And I think in some ways that you talk about, for example, Akon Rinpoche has said that when we die, you won't need to ask for him to come, because he'll come anyway. And I think that sort of automatic connection is something that higher beings can do. So maybe our phones will begin to do that. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it was only an example of how, because what we're looking at here is Dharmakaya, where we just looked at 10 powers, right? When you look at them, it's knowing people and knowing what to teach them and how to teach them. That's all on a relative level. And so the potential for all of that is there, which means it can happen spontaneously. That's why we use the mirror example. The ability to reflect somebody is there. All they need to do is come in front of the mirror and they are reflected. The mirror doesn't need to think or do anything like that. So those 10 powers, and then afterwards the fearlessnesses and the distinctive qualities, we are looking at what other beings experience, basically. So what we need to get our heads around in this section, because we're looking at Vimuktikaya and the qualities of freedom, is not that those wisdoms are there as wisdoms, like know this, know that, know all of these different things, but there is a space which has all that potential. So that when there is this person, you do know their aspirations, you know their karma, their blockages, what will help them, the different paths of Dharma they might be able or not able to follow. And then when they're gone, it's not as though there's any residue. We have to get our heads round the sort of, or the shunyata of these 10 powers, and what that means in terms of us, because we're looking at our own ultimate fulfillment. I mean, what I'm trying to say is that really what you want? You know, and if that's what you want, how does it work? How does it work? If you are Buddha mind interacting with thousands, millions of other beings, is it like this huge database of Neil and Myron and Ken and everybody's circumstances? That'd be a nightmare. You know, nothing personal, but I mean just, every being from the top to the bottom is that what omniscience means? Is that really what you're longing for? To have a head full of everybody's So it really, I keep saying it, but it's so true. Following the journey from where we are now up through the stages of the path, and how all of that falls into place. And here, in the very end, with enlightenment, how it works, and how in this chapter we look at the qualities that are there. And then in the next chapter, the last one, Buddha activity, we're seeing the incredible, the beautiful, spontaneous way in which beings are helped without us having to be full of stuff, helpful stuff. It's very subtle.
Thank you very much.
And I don't think the phone's ever going to be able to do it.
Ken, could I? Oh, sorry.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah, hi, Susan. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, you go first, Susan.
Oh, sorry.
Thanks. It sort of links to what you were talking about. I really wanted to thank you for what you said at the very start about the sort of aspiration to help beings and how we tend to see the visualization. You imagine beings all throughout space. And it really, in a way, it's been sort of distanced, and probably not everyone but me, from those beings. And when you think about it, is actually that sort of mesh of minds that are all around you all the time. It's as if, in a way, you're sort of wanting to help, and but at the same time thinking of it as being throughout space. You're not meshed with them. I'm not saying this properly, but
No, that's it.
I hope it
You're
makes
saying
sense.
it very well. It's true. It's like when we're close to somebody, and and they're going through stuff, then even if they're not there and you're not with them, you're not talking about it with them or anything, you're nevertheless carrying them. They're in you. Their situation you feel for, and you know what their mind is going through. And so then whatever you're doing, you're thinking about how to help them, or you're praying for them. But the point is, their reality is living inside you. It's not a story out there. You feel it. So what we have to learn as bodhisattvas is how to be present, I think is the word, with other beings, really truly connected to them, but able to help without our own mind getting involved and lost and desolate, affected negatively by all of that. This is so real. It's so true, and we come across it anyway, whether even if you're not a Buddhist, we come across it in ordinary life, how to help and feel for people and have real compassion and openness and care, and at the same time not be brought down by it, not be confused by it, not be damaged by it. And in all sorts of ways, we see burnout for people in compassionate, caring work, and so many aspects of this. So as a bodhisattva, how to care, but how to find equanimity and strength and all these things. It's a very real apprenticeship of being. Lara, what was it you were going to say?
Hi, thank you, Ken. First of all, thank you so much for these precious, amazing teachings. I feel as though I'm beginning to lose a little bit of faith or belief in reincarnation. And I don't know if it's possibly linked to not hearing any news about Akha Rinpoche's rebirth, but I just wonder if you could just give me a little bit of guidance or support. I feel really sorry that this is happening, but I just feel a bit lost with this strong faith I used to have in rebirth.
Yeah. It's a tough one. It affects A lot of us, I think, from time to time in different ways. Like for myself, I can remember the sense of it striking me and thinking, yeah, that's how it works. But then, going through some decades of life experience, meditation experience, Buddhist experience, trying to really work it out. Sometimes it doesn't seem at all so obvious. Sorry, I'm thinking about science, and like when you go down to an atomic level, there's just this huge mess of like particles and forces, and on our level, that's life. And sometimes I feel more the sort of huge cosmic chaos, rather than, somebody does this, then they die, then they get reborn as a that, in a very kind of solid way. This becomes much more hard to understand. But in my own case, I think there have been two aspects of confirmation. One is in people I've known who've died, and then as far as I'm concerned, have obviously come back as a new life. And it's almost hilariously obvious, because some things are, well, they're just so much like the old person that come out as time goes by. But then also all the research that's been done into children with past life memories, and they've been researched, or the kids have been taken back, and their stories have been confirmed, basically. And that's quite stunning. And there's enough of them, enough of those stories to make it convincing. For Akon Rinpoche's case, I think it's pretty clear. He is reborn. He's not found yet. They're working on it just now. But he's definitely, I think, somewhere on this planet, for sure. And it might take a while to actually, for the general public to know where he is. But please be reassured, he is reborn.
Ken, just to add something to that, I just want, it's something which I don't know if I've struggled with the idea of it myself, but I suppose I've thought about it quite a lot, and I think about my own experience of really a sense of emergence into this life very young, before I had any language or concepts at all. My first experience in this life is free of, it has no concepts. It's just experience, very vivid and very early on. And when I've reflected back on that in this context, it's just the idea of, I suppose, rebirth. Maybe it's trouble with the term rebirth. Maybe we think about that in too fixed and solid a way, too much like sort of popping out of an elevator back into this kind of form in some way, maybe in different clothes or whatever. And I'm wondering if it's maybe more like new experience will arise without a bit like coming out of dreams, where you've had a dream, but that you can't remember what actually happened. But while you were in the dream, it was vivid. And then you wake up into something else, maybe with some kind of gaps, but just that I can see, even from taking a slightly science-informed viewpoint, even at that level, it makes sense to me that there could be some continuity of experience in some way. I don't know, maybe I'm not saying anything very, very useful, I don't know, but I'm trying to articulate something that's quite difficult to put a form onto in terms of language. But that's certainly the feeling I've had, that I feel this underlying sense of a degree of I suppose you could say a kind of confidence that there might be new experiences, but the sense of meanness might not, or maybe doesn't continue in that way. I don't know. I don't know if that's any help to the discussion.
Yeah. I think of two things that can help with unraveling this. One is to understand what the Buddhist teachings are telling us, to understand what survives death and what doesn't. And I mean, I say this many times, but we've got the proof before our eyes. We can witness people at the end of their life and dying, see everything they are. They have language, they have an experience, they have everything that's in their head, in their mind, that they are. We can see that, and then physical life ends. That person's gone as far as we're concerned. And then we can see those who are reborn human, little babies. They don't come with language, they don't come with references. So obviously if we believe in reincarnation, between death and new life, there's a wipeout of so much. And that so much is what is stored in the brain, because the physical body dies. So if the brain is sort of like, and not just the brain, probably is much more complicated now, with the heart and the gut biome and all of that biology stuff. But wherever it is, the body dies, and any information that's stored there, any skill that's stored there, doesn't go with you. And then you're thrown back into the everything, where you are one with everything, but in a very confused way. So when the next life comes along, what is it that survives over? It's the power of karma. That's what the Buddha tells us. And then within that karma, there is mind karma. And body karma, speech karma, mind karma. And there's a propensity. So you're not born with language, but there will be some languages that you will learn much more easily than others. In your more recent languages, they'll come back very easily. And then you get the amazing, like with music, these little kids who so quickly they learn to play the piano, the violin, and it's just crazy to see, because you've got really a young kid, they're 4 or 5 years old, and when they sit down, they've not just got the physical skill to play a piano, but they've got that ability to translate the feelings of a piece. I knew one person, reincarnation of a singer, and actually somebody I helped quite a bit at one point, and really a giggling, silly teenager, right? When I first started helping her, she was 15 years old, right? Really, and not a very grown up, if I may say it, 15-year-old giggly teenager. She was, when she sang, she had to, later on went to a, what's it called? I've lost the term completely.
Opera school.
Where you, she became an opera singer afterwards. She went to
Conservatoire.
Yeah, conservatoire. That's it. Thank you very much. Yes, she went to. But before that, when she was a giggly teenager, she was already attracted to. And when she sang, there was somebody else. I mean, it was like a hallucination. You felt you had a 30-year-old, 40-year-old, very mature woman singing a piece with mastery. And then you got, when she finished, you got a little girl back again. So she had to learn. She went to the conservatoire, she learned about singing, she went off special things. But she already had that propensity from past life. Then Dharma people, you see people coming to Dharma. Some people take to meditation. So naturally, when they hear the teaching, they say, I've been waiting all my life to hear this. I've felt it in me, but now I've got the words, that really are formulating what I've always thought, what I've always felt to be, and so on. So understanding what survives death and what doesn't is very helpful in understanding reincarnation, I've found. And then these personal stories. I mean, that's all of that. And then the second thing I was going to say helps is our own meditation practice. Because when we develop shamatha in particular, with some strength, then you start to feel back to your own past lives and the strengths and weaknesses in those lives. That's very real. And it also gives us this feeling for how much you lose at death. It's such a bloody nuisance, honestly. You have to start again as a baby. You've got all the hazard of karma. Are you going to meet up with teachers and all the rest of it? There's 20, 25 years of just keep your fingers crossed. And with a bit of luck, you'll end up in the right place.
Well, I have a completely different spin on it. And
Go ahead, Myron.
to start off with, it's very easy to believe in reincarnation for Buddhists because they don't really believe in this incarnation. They believe this is appearance emptiness, sound and emptiness, appearance emptiness, all these emptiness. And so it's very easy to believe in many unreal incarnations. Like some guy said, if emptiness is possible, anything is possible, everything is possible because emptiness is possible. So then I've noticed that when these Yansis come around, that they look just like their former self, like especially Karmapa. He even comments that he looks older than his sister, and his sister's actually older, but he looks just like the prior Karmapa in many ways.
Yeah, but that doesn't need to be the case because there were in the former Karmapas, there were some who really didn't look like their previous ones. I mean, with this one, yeah, this one it is, and maybe that's helpful because maybe it's a time when that sort of thing will help people.
Was trying to convince one girl at this retreat about reincarnation, and I came across a picture of Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche, the old man, and then the little baby, and I showed it to her, and I said, "You see the family resemblance?" And she goes, "Yeah," and I go, "That's the reincarnation from a different family." So then she got it. So then a lot of times with Kalu Rinpoche, I noticed his reincarnation when he was ringing a bell at an empowerment. Then I flashed on the prior Kalu Rinpoche. So, if you don't believe in this incarnation, you can have many incarnations. And it's in the Buddhist teaching that the mind isn't born, the mind doesn't die. It goes through these hallucinations, appearance emptiness, awareness emptiness in this life, and then it goes through a death cycle, and then it goes through it just keeps going through all kinds of appearances.
Yes, but as you said yourself, Myron, the unity of appearance and emptiness. So we're talking about the appearance part.
Yeah.
The emptiness doesn't mean it doesn't appear that way. So we're just looking at why I appear as Ken, and I'm not going to appear as Myron. Next week when I come back, you won't look like me, and you won't speak like me. I won't speak like you.
Traces. That's correct. But I think your habitual traces, our habitual traces, my habitual traces, my karma is going to manifest as similar to what I'm manifesting as now, because that's my habitual tendencies to have two arms.
That's the appearance side. So the emptiness means what? It means the interdependence of that, the karma, causes and conditions, and the fact that it's intangible, changes all the time, it's impermanent. but it manifests in that way. So,
Oh yeah, that's the relative side also.
yeah, so that's what we're talking about. Yeah,
Yeah,
how that
right. So it's
believing
very
in
easy
it.
to believe in reincarnation
Yeah,
because we don't take this one to be that real. So the next one is very easy to appear. That's all.
yeah, be great to keep that lucidity about it as you go into the bardo. And
Well, who knows what's
there's
going to
some
happen?
Buddhists, they put these pictures, some babies who look really fed up and miserable, a baby's face, which is kind of, oh shit kind of thing, and saying, how did I end up here? I didn't want to be in the
Oh no, we got the precious human rebirth. We got the highest incarnation you can get.
Yeah.
And we met the greatest lamas and the greatest rinpoches. So we've been very lucky in this lifetime. You cannot get much better than what you have, Ken.
No.
You're one of the luckiest guys in the universe.
Yeah, and I really appreciate it. And we got to go. It's way past half
So
past.
congratulations to all of
Half
us.
past whatever hour it is, wherever you are. So see you next week. And
Thank you,
Bye-bye,
Ken.
Ken.
That
take
was
good
wonderful.
care. Take good care.
And
Thank
you.
you, Ken.
Bye-bye.